We are living in a time where hate has become louder, where words are fueling division, and where fear and violence are entering our streets, schools, homes, and places of worship. Every day, people are being targeted because of their faith, race, culture, or simply because they are different. But we refuse to allow hate to define our future. This series is about more than hate crimes. It is about humanity, healing, understanding, and courageous conversations that bring people together instead of tearing them apart. Featuring faith leaders, community advocates, public officials, survivors, and voices from different backgrounds united in confronting hate and building hope. Because love must speak louder than hate, and our shared humanity must always rise above division. Join us for this powerful new series on the SB Life Institute podcast, Conversations on Hate, Healing, Unity, and Hope. Coming soon.
Greetings and peace and love with you all, and welcome to SB Life Institute podcast. I am your host, Safraz Bacchus, a spiritual leader, certified life coach, and a chaplain. And also, I serve as a global peace ambassador. Today, we are discussing something very important, and that is anti-Semitism, a form of prejudice that has affected Jewish communities for centuries and continue to present challenges in the very modern world that we live in. Our aim today in our discussion, I must say, it's not only to speak about anti-Semitism as a social issue, but also to explore how dialogue, how education and shared values can help build understanding between various communities and societies. As an imam and spiritual leader, a life coach, I have witnessed the importance of creating and working to creating a safe space where people can speak and dialogue openly, listen in a very sincere manner, and also reflect and ponder. Conversation such as these conversations allow us to humanize one another beyond the labels that we often see people throw at each other and the very assumptions that we have. I must also say, and I say this formally, that hatred and animosity often grows where there is silence, where there is misinformation or lack of understanding of one another. Dialogues and conversation, I'll say, allows us to replace fear with knowledge and replace suspicion with empathy. And it is my distinguished honor today to welcome no other than Rabbi, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Rachel.
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 Yeah.
Okay, yes, good. Goldenberg, and an amazing individual, and I would like to take this moment in introducing her. She's the founder of the Malkhut, 10-year-old progressive Jewish spiritual community in Western Queens, New York, ordained by Jewish Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in 2003. Our beloved rabbi served in a mainstream pulpit world for the first 13 years of her career. She also brings training as a mindfulness teacher through the Institute of Jewish Spirituality and her social justice leadership at Jews for Racial and Economic Justice to her rabbinic work. Our rabbi lives in Queens with her husband, Jim, and they have two young adult children, Amina and Zeph. It's an honor and a privilege to have a rabbi sitting in our studio today, and we're going to have this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining this podcast today, and I'll say that we appreciate your time and we appreciate your insight and your willingness to engage in a meaningful conversation, especially in something that is contemporary that's affecting our community today. Anti-Semitism, I'll say that it's often discussed in historical terms, but yet many reports indicate that incidents of anti-Semitism continue to occur in parts of the world. In our time, that people often say that we live in a developed world and people are much more conscious of what they say, but we see this type of behavior plagues our society today. As a imam, I can remember Pittsburgh synagogue shooting in 2018. And when I heard of this, a group of religious leaders, we came together and we went to the borough hall, and we spoke against this, despite of our faith background. And I'll say that when individuals are actually targeted because of their faith, um, we should always stand together and voice our strong voice that we will not allow this. Based on your experience interacting with people and living in New York as a rabbi, can you share with us the main forms of anti-Semitism that takes place today that you see? Because some of the things that we see on social media as well, that how do you the various forms that it comes, maybe we can inform our listeners about them, and then we could chat a little bit.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. First of all, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
We only just met, and I just so appreciate your welcome and interest in dialogue.
Yeah.
And I actually like to start with talking about what happened in Pittsburgh, because I think it's a really interesting example of how white supremacy and fear of the other in general, fear of immigrants, xenophobia, how those things are related to anti-Semitism. And, the individual who carried out that mass shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh was a white supremacist nationalist. And he committed that act of murder, at least what he said, was because the synagogue was involved with fighting against, or actually they're involved in wanting to welcome immigrants into our country.
Yes.
And so, and a lot of the time, anti-Semitism kind of rears its ugly head as sort of a way of Jews get blamed for all kinds of things, that in particular white supremacists or folks who might be suffering economically, they want to put their suffering, find a reason, an explanation for their suffering, right? And so blame immigrants for having trouble finding a job, right? Or for the economy going south. They blame Jews for empowering certain kinds of.
It's a level of projection of projection. And we see that type of behavior quite often.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. We see Islamophobia and anti-Semitism really being two sides of the same coin. Also, a lot, I think, in New York City. And, so often folks who are expressing anti-Semitic beliefs also hold Islamophobic beliefs. The ways that we're seeing it manifest here in New York City these days, there's unfortunately been, acts of violence against individuals who are visibly Jewish, right? Walking down the street. I'm someone who's not necessarily visibly Jewish. So the folks who tend to be most vulnerable are
those that are probably wear their attire, and I can relate to that as well. I don't want to divert. I can relate to that when you wear your religious garb, quite often that we're susceptible to attack, the stares that you get, the negative words and insults that they spurt to you. And I can begin to imagine that how frightening that may be for the Jewish community in New York, that they're leaving their home to worship with their outfit, with their family. And I'll say this from the bottom of my heart, it's a powerful image. Like when I drive down in certain areas and I see Friday evening going into Saturday morning and they're holding hands crossing. A beautiful scene. But people, there are those out there that don't see that as a beautiful scene when someone is going to place of worship, and I can't begin to imagine what they're thinking in their heads, having to look back over their shoulder while going to be in the most vulnerable place.
Yeah. No, it's scary.
Yeah, it's very scary.
You know, folks who might practice more modern forms of Judaism, like I do, and also who are white, right?
Yeah.
Can easily pass. We can choose to not stand out in those ways. The other thing, you know, our institutions, our synagogues, our buildings are being targeted.
Yes.
And really sadly, you know, Jewish folks in the United States are being kind of associated with the acts of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
So we've seen this uptick in anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic acts because folks who just may not really understand the distinction between the state of Israel and American Jews make that association. And you know, during the genocide in Gaza and in this current war on Iran, Lebanon, and the Gulf, you know, folks also are projecting their anti-war sentiments against Jews in the United States.
And that's unfortunate. Uh, uh, this is like previous generations, previous like years ago, this anti-Semitism, as you said, it raises ugly heads in different form. Now someone can be in the comfort of their homes and being targeted with the presence of the digital age, so to speak. And I can say sometimes I post it. Like last week, I posted something in my social media, and I posted a friend of mine that we're very closely knitted. He nurtured me in my first unit of clinical pastoral education at Northwell Health, and he's a Reformed Jew, uh, and I posted up something, and even individuals within my own community, because of this bias and this assumption, the assumptions that they have, were typing things that were not acceptable. And so you can be in the comfort of your home, and the Jewish community will be targeted because just who they are. So can you share something about that? Maybe about how this presents itself even on the social media platform, and how we can probably educate our people. I think this it's so important for education about acceptance and understanding about a faith. When you understand the faith, you're able to appreciate the faith. If you don't understand,
well, and if you don't know people, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the way anti-Semitism shows up is this kind of almost this mystical idea about these people who exist, right? These people who exist who are like pulling the strings,
Yes.
or are controlling things like the media, or control, right? Those are the sort of anti-Semitic tropes that have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's this faceless, mysterious group of people who are behind the scenes, you know, pulling the levers or pulling the strings. Those tend to be the tropes of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Yes.
When you meet a person,
Yeah.
right, who's
Definitely.
Jewish,
Yeah.
you realize, oh, right, they're actually human beings.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. You know, I had a very dear friend in college who grew up not in the United States. He had never met Jewish people before. He was educated with a lot of these conspiracy theories. He was taught to believe that the Holocaust was a lie. Right? He was taught to believe that didn't happen. I was the first person he met who, I mean, I have grandparents who escaped the Holocaust. I have great-grandparents who were murdered. I have many relatives who were murdered in the Holocaust. He met me, he heard my stories, all of that kind of misinformation kind of melted away for him.
Wow.
And he felt terrible, right? But that's how he was brought up, in a kind of bubble of misinformation.
Yeah.
This was before social media. I mean, this is in the 90s, okay? So much the more so, I think with social media and misinformation being able to just proliferate and travel so quickly, right?
Yeah.
The blink of an eye,
Yeah.
ignorance can just spread.
Yeah.
And again, on social media, you're not interacting with actual three-dimensional human beings with a story, where, you know, when you're sitting in a room with someone like we are doing today,
Yes, of course.
right? We realize, oh, we are all human beings who have the same needs, the same suffering, the same, right, yearnings.
It's so interesting that you're saying that, because I feel the same way. I can recall the first time, it was like just before the pandemic, I entered into a synagogue, and that feeling that I had, it's a feeling that I can't really explain, but all I knew that I was very happy and excited that I stepped feet into a place of worship, of the Jewish community, and we were discussing anti-Semitism, ways and means how we can tackle that with other religious leader, and the space was open for us, and I learned a lot, because prior to the discussion, there was someone that came and spoke about the Jewish prayers and some aspect of the faith. So I guess what we can say, how important is it, education in our contemporary time, about diversity in terms of religion, how important it is for you to learn something about Islam or something about Buddhism, or about the Jewish faith. Encouraging people, it's important to encourage people to learn a little bit about that, so you're able to appreciate it, right? And also, as you said, meeting each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think education and relationships, they're the key. They're like the medicine for this illness of anti-Semitism, really. And, I studied Islam in college as a Jew. I grew up in a family. My father's a rabbi. I didn't know much about Islam. I took a wonderful course on Islam. And I'm able to then communicate to my Jewish community the ways in which we are so similar.
There's a
We
lot
have
of common.
the same prophets. We share so many of the same holy stories and books. That we both have deep legal traditions, right? That we have dietary laws that are very similar. There's so much in common, and I think once we start to learn that about each other, we start to see each other as cousins or siblings.
It's interesting that you say that, because when we look at the commonalities, we build bridges, and we don't build walls that divides people. We learn more. We have a lot more in common than differences, and I think when we engage in the educational process, and while we both realize how important education is, that education has, I do believe that it has to stem from a young age, like from our kids. I this is my independent thought that religious teachings should be taught as a subject in the school system, because not for someone to embrace, but in terms of culture, that look at religion as a culture. So when a child grows up and knows about religious cultures and so forth, somehow when they see someone with a turban, or see someone with a kippah, or a kufi, that they will not ask what that is. They will not ask that question. They will know that these are people that follow particular guidelines, religious practices, through that medium of uh, can you tell me, if you don't mind, I'll probably put you on the spot and ask you, you know, your time being here as a rabbi in New York, have you have an experience where you face this type of behavior pattern? Can you share and how you dealt with it?
Let me give you a little background on how I grew up, because I think it really informs how I am with this issue these days in New York City as a rabbi. I grew up in a town in South Central Pennsylvania, not a big city, not a metropolitan area. And I was one of very few Jewish people growing up in my public school and in my neighborhood. And so and my father's a rabbi. Okay. So I grew up really being a bridge builder from a very young age. And that's sort of that's just how I've always seen myself. So it's happened to me, say, I'll here's an example. So my community doesn't have its own building. So for our big high holidays, we rent space.
Yes.
And have you ever seen a Torah scroll? Read the scroll?
Yes,
the first five books of the Bible, right? So I had to bring it literally in a cab or an Uber from my home to the place where we're having our worship services.
Yes.
And I got in a cab. The cab driver sees me with my Torah. And he starts sharing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. The Jews are all rich. The Jews control the world. Conspiracy theories about the Rothschilds. How all the Jews are wealthy, which is none of that is true.
Yeah.
Just like all people, right?
Yes,
We have
of course.
a range of socioeconomic levels in the Jewish community. My initial reaction to things like that is I don't actually get offended. I really understand that it comes from ignorance and from not knowing, and I see my role as teaching. It doesn't scare me. Look, I've been very lucky. I have not experienced violent interpersonal anti-Semitism. I've never been attacked personally, physically, verbally. And I think, that's a completely different situation where you need to keep yourself safe and, protect yourself and get yourself out of that situation. But most of the experiences I've had with anti-Semitism in New York City have been with neighbors where I just, I say, well, you may have been taught that, but here's what's actually true.
Truth. Yeah.
So
again, you're saying importance of educating. Yeah, how important it is for us to take
on the
macro level.
I mean, I'm not sure I have a story of my, being personally or even my community experiencing direct anti-Semitism here in New York City. I'm very lucky. Growing up in York, Pennsylvania, we did have that experience. We had a local synagogue where probably some white supremacists it'd be very offensive to Muslims too, put a pig's head on the door of the synagogue.
Oh my,
that's very scary. That's really a threat. It's very deeply offensive. And the best response to those things I find is to gather our allies, gather our friends of all faiths together to speak out. And what I discovered in New York City, when an incident occurs, good people show up, good people show up. So after Pittsburgh happened, one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced in New York City, it was a very traumatic thing for the Jewish community. I was scared to go to services and lead worship the next Sabbath. And I invited a couple of pastors whom I knew. I just started my community. I didn't know a lot of people yet, just to come and sit with us at services. And they showed up. And that makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And then there was this beautiful Shabbat gathering in public in Jackson Heights, and the people providing the security for it were Buddhists, Muslims, Bangladeshis, all kinds of our neighbors showed up to hold us and allow us to grieve and, and be in public and feel safe. So I mostly have positive stories.
And I guess in that positive story, I think could be an inspiration for others as well. That when something happens in our community, I often I analyze things when it happens. Right, sometimes communities are not proactive, but rather they're reactive. Something happens, then they show up in droves. I often believe that it's important for religious leaders like yourself, religious leaders in a whole. We must have a pathway to prevent this, at least try to prevent, or through education, awareness before it happens. When it happens, everybody goes out, the heart is there. But we have to tackle this issue, I think, issues like Islamophobia or xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of hate in a systematic way. Yeah. And that is why, again, I think having this conversation. I created this podcast simply because of a conversation like this, because this is my thought process. So I think there should be interaction between religious groups, like inviting a person like yourself to, for example, to my mosque, to speak about it, right? Or interacting with children on Saturdays, or go to the Sikh community and to speak about it, right? Creating that awareness by going into these spaces through the medium of education, workshops maybe, looking at statistics, and how I know that the city is doing an amazing job, at least trying their best, through, I know a good friend of mine, Vijay. He's working in hate crime unit. He's working tirelessly to get people together to prevent hate crime and bring awareness. But I think we can work along with other organizations to sensitize and to bring that awareness, so that it will minimize, not prevention, because sometimes we can't change the mindset of individuals, but some level of prevention, or minimizing the occurrence of this, that be able to change the thought process of individuals. Our Jewish brothers, you said cousins, and that's the way I look at it. Ismail, Ishaq, yes, yes, they're cousins, families, and brothers, yeah. So, and that's the way I look at it. And if we present it in that format, and also we're all children of God. When white supremacists, looking at a Jewish person and thinking that they're superior, God created you and created them, right? And so we're all creation of God, and if God is just in his ways and just in his decision making, he will not, create individuals with a level of superiority over others, that it's based on love in our hearts.
Have the same teaching, that we all descend from the same person, right? From the very beginning, we descend from one Adam. Right?
Yes. And that's, I think that is. Can you tell me a little bit about your synagogue?
I would love to.
Yeah.
So, I founded Malkhut 10 years ago. This is our 10th anniversary year. It's very exciting.
Can we tell you a little bit about the name? Yeah.
So, it comes from the root melech, or malak, right? Melech, right, which is sovereignty. But in
interesting, that's one of the names of God.
Yeah. And so in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, you may have heard of Kabbalah, right? There are many manifestations of the divine, many different divine names. Malkhut is the aspect of the divine that is most accessible to us here on earth. It's very connected to my mindfulness practice. So it's the experience of the unfolding of divinity in our awareness from moment to moment.
Yes.
Okay. And it's also associated with the feminine aspect of the divine. So you may have heard of the word Shekhinah, which is the name of the divine that's feminine. So there's a bit of a play on the word Malkhut, sovereignty, and queenship, right? And here we are in Queens. So that's
I love that.
That's the play on the name. But we also, at Malkhut, we practice contemplative forms of prayer that are really about awareness of being itself as it manifests from moment to moment. So that's where Malkhut comes from. I was ordained as a Reform rabbi in the Reform movement. Our community is not formally affiliated with a particular stream or denomination of Judaism, but we're progressive, we're liberal, we're egalitarian, meaning men and women have equal access to everything that we do. We don't have a building. We rent space. We mostly rent from churches because they tend to have the buildings that we have access to. And our church partners have been very generous to us. We hold worship services and children's learning in Jackson Heights. Twice a month on Shabbat morning, on Saturday morning. We also have programs in Long Island City. And then we hold all the Jewish holidays throughout the year. We kind of pop up across Western Queens. We've rented from CUNY School of Law many times for our High Holy Days. I have a wonderful rabbinical student who works with me, who's an intern with us. And our community is growing. So, we have probably about 200 people who engage with our programs across the year. But we reach many more. We reach probably 900 people. And we love to sing. We love to make music. We pray a lot through music.
Through music.
Yeah, through singing, through chant. And I'm trying to think what else I can say. But I'm happy to answer other questions.
No. But it's nice to, for individuals to know what goes on in a synagogue in terms of prayer, some of the activities that you have, because when there's a sense of unknown as to what transpires in the synagogue, or what do you talk about kids, for example. You use a space to inspire kids, inspire communities, different people. So I'm trying to connect what you do as a Jewish rabbi, Reformed Jewish rabbi, should I say, and bring that awareness to our listeners across the spectrum, so they will know that the practices that is there, that it is all uplifting practices, and there's nothing to hate about uplifting practices. Our communities will flourish if we have people with spirituality, with a sense of spirituality, grooming our younger generation within the Islamic faith, within the Jewish faith, within the Christian communities, within the Hindu communities, grooming the youngsters to hold on religious values. And I think it's important that the work that you do, and I want to thank you so much. We often will have a, a session of 30 minutes. We're wrapping up right now, but I want to say that your time that we spend having this very important dialogue, that commitment to work together. Would you have anything to say about how important it is for communities to work together to battle hate crime and combat hate crime as we conclude?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that we immunize our children, our communities against hate is through meeting each other, through sharing meals with each other, through sharing space with each other, through learning that, in my faith, I bet we are upholding many of the same values that you are. So, for instance, when we pray on our Sabbath, on our day of rest, we're praying for peace. We're trying to cultivate compassion. We're praying for justice, and we work towards tzedek, right, which is like tzedakah, right? Same root. Towards justice and fairness and righteousness. And the thriving of all people, and so, I mean, I think the way I actually don't like the word combat hate, because it's
interesting.
It's right.
Yeah.
It's a military
Terminology.
term, and I think what we can do instead is cultivate wholesome qualities of peace, of compassion, of justice, of solidarity.
Yeah. Powerful message. We want to thank you so much for joining our podcast. I'm sure that this would not be the last conversation we will have and the last time we will see each other. The work that you do is important, and the Jewish community is an integral part of New York. And as I say, I always look at our Jewish brothers and sisters as a cousin. And while they might be differences in terms of the political atmosphere that is happening around, that does not mean that we allow hate to foster in our heart. Now, we may hate an action of a person, but we were never taught to hate. In my faith, I often echo this, that when the Prophet migrated to Medina, he mentioned to the people, spread peace. In a diverse, Medina was diverse. You had people from the Jewish community, those that migrated from Mecca to Medina. They were different cultures and different tribes. And he said, spread peace and feed the indigent. He said, pray at night while people are asleep, and you will enter into the abode of peace. And we were all created from God, and God created us. We are the children of God, and I think it's so important for us to advocate for love and peace in a world that is broken. Seriously, I think it's so vital for us to raise our voice and not to be silent. And when we are silent and say, this does not affect us because I'm a Muslim and that's a Jew, it's good, then we're bankrupt morally if we look at it that way. We must be able to stand up and say no when it happens to the Jewish community, no when it happens to the Muslim community, no when they burned the Hindu flags, or no when they target the African American churches. We should we should do that. And thank you so much, and kindly join us on our podcast and share the word. Is Safraz Bacchus Life Institute, and we'll encourage you to subscribe and have a blessed day and peace and love. Thank you.